All right, we're here. We're all incredibly prepared for the Oathbringer Dawnshard live show. Woo!
Yeah.
So we'll start tiny bit spoiler free. I mean, spoiler free, I guess, for Oathbringer. I don't think it's reasonable for us to be spoiler free for the first two books in this series if we're talking about the third one. Basically, this was all a reread, or we've all read this book more than once. How does it rank for you in the Stormlight? Was it better this time around, worse, etc.? Stephanie, you just finished it probably an hour ago. How do you feel?
30 minutes ago. Honestly, I feel like the first part of this one wasn't as good for me on reread, but I fully admit that's more of like a subjective thing, and life has just been nuts. But the ending was even better for me on reread.
Nice.
I still think this is too long. It's a good time, but I think it could be like 200 pages shorter and still do what it needs to do. But the ending did help make up for that.
All right, Roger.
For me, I've always liked each new Stormlight like the most, and I'm not sure if it's just recency bias or it's just my like scientific lore nerd heart just getting more and more happy because we get more and more of like the lore and scienciness as we go along. So I really like Oathbringer. I do think that the pacing is a little bit strange sometimes, but I feel like that's kind of, I don't always love the interludes because I'm not a Cosmere nerd enough to understand them half the time. So I'm kind of like, why am I in some random, I don't care. And then the flashback scenes, I think that these are the most exciting flashback scenes because they're also like really dark, especially for Sanderson. And I don't know that I expect that from him. But yeah, I mean, I like Oathbringer a lot. I don't know if it's going to topple Rhythm of War. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I agree with that about the interludes and all that too.
I do too, which I always feel like is like a weird take because I'm like, I love it.
I'm
but like,
judging all of you harshly at the moment. But that's
yeah, we're being judged by Angela.
Fake fans.
Big fan of the interludes. I always forget about them. I always forget everything that happened.
Your last reread was a little further away.
Yeah, it was a little further away, but I did reread the first half of the book.
Cool.
Again, and I feel like every time I reread Oathbringer, I remember how much I liked it, and then I forget by the like at the end. I'm like, did I love Oathbringer? And then I reread it, and I'm like, I really love Oathbringer for some reason. It might be because I really like Dalinar or the inclusion of Lift, but I'm just like, I don't know. I think it's still not my absolute favorite, but it's close.
Gotcha. Oathbringer and I have a very odd relationship. It might be my favorite now, which is very weird because it was definitely my least favorite for a while. So I don't really know where I'm at. I think part of it,
a longer journey than us.
Well, so I think part of it is Oathbringer is a poorly paced book. So when you're reading it the first time, you don't know what it's doing, and you don't have your normal like act structure to like give you like a sense of like this is the high, this is the low. Like it's like a very oddly paced book. But when you're rereading it, you're like, oh, we're about to get to this part that I actually do really like. And, you know, like you kind of actually, it's like, I think of it as like you're going on a hike. And the first time you go on a hard hike, you're like, ugh, but then you see the summit and you're like, ooh. And when you do that hike again, if you are a repeat hiker, you're like, this isn't as bad because I know once I get past this hurdle, this thing happens. You know, like, I think that's me and Oathbringer. And it reminds me of like when I reread like Well of Ascension and Mistborn, where it's like, this is the most rewarding reread book. Because I do think it's too long, but then also I try to think, what would I get rid of? And I'm now at the point where I'm like, but it's all important. I feel like a stupid Wheel of Time fan. I'm just like, no, it must stay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm just like, but because, and I think that's part of it. And I was talking to Jess because she's been reading Stormlight and she doesn't like really like how long it is. But I'm like, Stormlight 4, a long epic fantasy series, is actually okay paced. Like if you're comparing it to other things of its ilk, like A Song of Ice and Fire or Realm of the Elderlings or Malazan or something like that, where we're talking over 800-page books on average. Like, I don't think it's that bad, but it's just like when you sign up for a stupid long book, that's kind of part of it. It's like part of the coziness is like, I'm going to be bored for a little bit. And that's like baked in.
Yeah.
We know, you know, you're going to get those moments of like,
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, but I think because it's like my third reread or something, I was just like, this is great. I'm having such a good time. I'm like powering through. And also, Shallan doesn't stress me out as much because I already know how crazy she is. I'm like, the first time I read it, I was like so stressed. And I was like, I don't know when I'm going to not be stressed. Stop stressing me out. And the ending was so fatiguing for me the first time I read it. And now I'm like, ooh, it's so cool.
It was a lot better, yeah. Now that I knew kind of that it was going to be a good ending, I wasn't as stressed this time around. And maybe that's why it took me a little bit longer, because I wasn't like flipping through like what happens next, I need to know kind of thing. And
Ben says, popping in to say hello. Can't wait to watch this one. I get back from a gaming convention. Looking forward to it. Okay. Hello, Ben. But yeah, so I think I'm an Oathbringer apologist now, but it's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, you're going to hate it. It's fine. Like, it's not for the one-time girlies. Okay.
No, I definitely agree. I liked it much more. Like the first time I reread it, I realized I liked it much more than I did the first. And then it's like the more I reread it, I'm like, okay.
Well, especially because
it's just that series that like it is going to be better on reread. It's going to be great the first time, but it's still going to be better on reread. But at least I don't feel like any of the books in Stormlight are like Wheel of Time. We don't have any like books 7 through 10 apology where like we know it sucks, but you have to push through it. Like it's not like that. Like Oathbringer isn't bad even on your first read, I don't think.
Right.
But it is still like on a first read, it is exhausting and fatiguing, and I recognize that.
For me, it was my favorite on my first read. Every single time, like when I was going through it the first time, Way of Kings was my favorite, then Words of Radiance, then Oathbringer. But I think it's because my favorite character gets some good moments in Oathbringer.
I forget who's your favorite?
Yasna.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was so weird because when I read Oathbringer, like I wasn't on BookTube. I only read 30 books a year. I was like, yes, it's out. And I gave myself like a month to read it. And I just read it like I normally read all my other Stormlight books. And I even finished it on my birthday. And I was just like, I felt so lackluster after I finished it that it was like my first like 4-star rating on Sanderson, like a Cosmere book. I've given 2 stars to like his Reckoner series because that series is trash. But
we don't count that series.
That's his like superhero adjacent.
I think that's like the only one of the few ones I have not.
You might like it. I mean, I could see people enjoying it, but it's like so dumb, the ending, that I just...
I mean, superheroes just aren't a good buzzword for me most of the time. I think I'm still fatigued from years and years of MCU.
Well, this was actually, so when this came out, it was like before people were done with the MCU, but it was also before we had like Invincible and The Boys, which are doing the subversive super. So it was kind of, but like, you know how normally there's great payoff for lore in a Sanderson series? No, that did not happen. I read Calamity trusting the man, and I was like, sir.
Bamboozled, hoodwinked.
I was unhappy.
Been let down.
And that was actually, I didn't know how to articulate it at the time, but that's his first person point of view series that I had read. And I'm like, yeah, I just hate when you write first person. I cannot read a Sanderson first person and have a good time.
Does the main character do Yelp reviews in their head?
No, he does metaphors.
Oh, God.
Anyways, this isn't about Reckoners, but I don't recommend this.
Or the Frugal Wizard.
Honestly,
I like the Frugal Wizards guy a tiny bit more because it does at least have charm. It's just, but
I mean, it's charming.
I still haven't read that one.
All right,
just save yourself. Don't do it.
Other spoiler-free thoughts. We've talked about the length a bit. It is too long, but at the same time, I think it's mostly the pacing because Rhythm of War is longer, and most people don't say Rhythm of War is too long.
Yeah, it's the pacing.
Because, like,
it's definitely
objectively speaking, each book has been getting longer and longer and longer, and that doesn't seem to be as much of an issue.
The limit doesn't exist.
Yeah. Like I said, and like my first read, I was just so, and it being part of it was like maybe I just didn't understand how personality disorders may or may not work, but I was just unprepared for Shallan's character pivot shift stuff in this book. I was very scared, and I was scared of the love triangle. In hindsight, I shouldn't have been scared of the love triangle, but I was scared of it.
I know. The first time I read it, I was too. This time I really enjoyed it, seeing like what he did with her character. Because I knew where it was going again, so less stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the lore reveals, once you've been introduced to them, you really appreciate like, oh, this is why we are slowly bringing the coalition together and like doing all like, and it's not like I said, it's kind of like boring, but it kind of needs to be there ish.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It had to happen.
Okay. What should we talk about next? Probably spoilers. We can probably do spoilers now. I see, Jesse read it a long time ago all the way through, and I probably read it the next longest to go because I read it in July. So I'm a little fuzzy. Also, the interludes are perfect, and you guys all need to like get over yourself. The interludes are great. They're like the reason I was like, oh, the Stormlight's different. You can see all the world. I'm just saying it's great.
Not when you're mentally exhausted and you just want to make it through.
I mean, sure. But that is not how one should approach any reading experience.
They're not entertaining because they are, but
I love them. I also like, I think my first time reading it, I loved how ominous some of the interludes were. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, I will say this isn't really a spoilery thing, but Lift, I'm not a huge fan of Lift, but I loved the one scene in this book where she told Eleanor he had a mushy butt.
No, he had a tight butt. That's
why she didn't trust him. Yeah, sorry, tight butt.
Yeah, no one can trust somebody with a butt that nice.
One of my favorite moments.
I love her.
I was in my office listening to it, and I laughed out loud. I was like, I totally forgot about this.
Or she steals his lunch.
Yeah.
She's like, were you always in here?
So I think I like her in this one more because it's small doses, and we don't use the word awesome 50,000 times in a 200-page book.
Yes.
I mean, I don't disagree. I love Lift. We all know that.
But she was entertaining in this one.
She is entertaining.
She's kind of like the equivalent of how like you can't really have a Hulk standalone movie. They're okay, but they're never that great. But Hulk as like a side character is ideal.
Yes.
And actually, I'm lying. The Hulk TV show from the Sci-Fi Channel is actually gold. They just don't actually know how to use Hulk very often. So I'm already backtracking.
I don't know. For me, I feel like his comedic characters are always too much. They're always like a caricature, and like I don't love them. Wayne, Lift.
And what's interesting, and like this
Wayne.
Ben is not here right now, but not Ben the Overlord, but another Ben that I've buddy read a lot of stuff with. His review on YouTube, he brought up how Wayne and Lift and a lot of these comedic characters read like a very specific class in British society, and it all feels kind of like a caricature of that like lower class level. And it was a very interesting conversation about it and how it kind of rubbed him the wrong way and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know enough to confirm or deny any of this.
I wonder if Sanderson is a fan of Dickens. Because Dickens is like huge into caricatures and he uses those for class too.
Yeah.
And I didn't think about that till you said that.
But does it ring kind of true-ish? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and
even
I just have to read them all in a Cockney accent.
Yeah.
Even though Lopin's supposed to be based more off of like Latin caricature, but which doesn't make it better, but it is meant to be a little.
But that's really interesting though. I never thought about it like that, but that's a really good point.
Every time I think of Lopin, I think of like George Lopez. So literally.
We will talk about Lopin more because I do actually think like he's a shining part of Dawnshard. I think he's great in Dawnshard. I think Dawnshard's actually a very fun novella, and I forgot because Edge Dancer is so not fun. So,
well, especially when you just read the book and then you realize that when you're starting friggin' the first novella, oh my god, what are Edge Dancer? That the first half of it is the friggin' interlude that you just read, and so you're sitting there and you go, "This seems really familiar," and you're like, "Oh, because I just read this." I don't want to read it twice.
I was in my car listening to that, and I was like, I feel like I've heard this before. I'm like, oh, I haven't. So then I had to wait for a red light and change it to chapter 1. So annoying.
Yes.
But in the actual book, I think for me, the thing I had a lot of fun with on this reread was the Unmade. Especially because I had been noticing them more in the first 2 books. And like, I kind of like, because I think now having read Wheel of Time and read a lot of other things that obviously have influenced how Stormlight was made, I'm like, oh, this is just like your cosmic entities sort of villain things. Because there's like layers of villainry, right? Like these are the things Odium made and blah, blah, blah. And I enjoyed, because we met 2 or 3 in this book, I'm pretty sure. I just thought they were really interesting. Because you have the Tower, you have the Thrill, and you have the Mirror Lady. And then there was one other. You had the the other one in Kholinar. There were 2 in Kholinar.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was such a fun, subtle way of opening it up, but not in like a Deathly Hallows and Harry Potter kind of way where I'm like, where did these come from? Like, they're just here now.
Yeah.
Plus, they were the Forsaken, but the Forsaken, if they were actually semi-competent, because the Forsaken are like bumbling Scooby-Doo villains. These ones actually have a little bit of like.
Well, and I really I
them.
forgot the implications of the mirror one and like her spren, how they're corrupted spren, but she's not actually necessarily working for Odium anymore, and that's going to have huge implications. And like, that's really cool. So I don't know. I enjoyed those scenes and learning more about them quite a bit. And like, I don't know, because you still had that climax scene with the thrill at the end, and I was like, oh, that didn't feel like it was unearned. Like everything that led to the moment of Dalinar and handling the thrill was like, oh, this is awesome. Even down to like how he has the crystal to even let him do the thing on top of the emotional stuff he has to do. So
Agreed.
Unmade stuff was fun for me.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
And I always love like an archaeology, like finding out about the lost civilization type stuff. So I love all the parts when we're like kind of trying to figure out how Urithiru worked, how to get anything to function anymore. Like the Radiants clearly lived here, but like how did they have food? What were they doing? Like I just love all of that kind of stuff. I eat it up when we're like spelunking in the caverns and dealing with that Unmade that was down there, then finding all of the like hidden,
that was terrifying,
weird gem thingies that have some information for them and like different snippets and piecing it all together. I just love that stuff.
I also really love, I'm pretty sure it's this book where they realize, oh, they weren't high tech back then.
Yeah. They're like, they weren't that. Oops.
Yeah, because they were convinced that they had crazy fabrials or whatever, and then they're like, oh no, it wasn't like that. Oops.
That's not what it was.
Yeah. And like, I think I also really enjoyed what was it? So we had that one herald who came back, and that's why this all the cage broke, blah blah blah. But he was like, that one lady who's been cutting out the eyes on everything. I forget her name. The heralds are the hardest thing for me to keep track of, and I'm not convinced they're interesting it yet. But they're the hardest.
I always get their names confused with Shallan's siblings' names.
I don't remember their names ever.
Yeah, so the heralds, like, I know at the end of this book it's supposed to be a big deal that one of the heralds was killed by Moash, but I'm not sure if I care. Moash. But like, I mean, we all know, screw Moash. He's not great.
We all know nobody likes him.
Though.
Sorry.
No, I wasn't gonna stick up for Moash. No.
We're like,
no, I was just thinking, like, speaking of other Ben, a really average Ben. That scene with Moash, he made a really good point, and then I read the chapter like the second time around. Once you know what Moash is going to do, the chapter's way more heartbreaking, not because of what Moash did, but all the other things that were happening. Because I was so expecting it, like, screw Moash, he's going to do what he's going to do. So I thought that was interesting on reread too, what I focused on that chapter.
Are you talking about the scene with Gavilar and Moash, or the end scene with Moash?
That scene.
It was in the 80s chapters.
Is that part 4 or part 5?
That is...
Actually, it would be end of part 3.
Elhokar. It was the one with Elhokar.
Okay. Because, I agree, especially because most of that perspective is Kaladin. And, like, he is, like, panic attack mode. And, like, that's just hard to read in general. But especially, not only is he rightfully having a panic attack, seeing all these characters that we have grown sympathy for as readers... That was except for Moash. I have like no sympathy for him, but like the Parshmen that were there.
I know. The first time you're just like, oh, Moash, and then everybody else is like, oh, that's so sad. And then the second time it's like, screw you.
But that end of part 3 is a prime example of why the first read of Oathbringer was hard for me and a reread was better. Because first time reading Oathbringer, end of part 3 should have been victorious in a typical fantasy situation. We should be winning the day. They don't win anything. They categorically lose at the end of part 3. And I think my brain was like, what?
What just happened?
No, that's not the story I signed up for. Now what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is not what I wanted.
I don't feel safe anymore. Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. And now I know, we have another book. I have a better idea where, it's just...
Doesn't matter. It's still like It still hurts.
I mean, it's still horrible.
It's still terrible. It still hurts.
But every time I get to that, I just hear everyone going, effing Moash.
Because he's awful.
Yeah,
Mainly
everybody
because
does.
it's, again, not, so many things could have gone right in that scene. Ellikar's about to say his first words.
I know.
Oh my god, that's so close.
And we
I will
all know
never
the
forgive
ratings get a huge
Sanderson for
boost when
doing
they
that
do
to
that.
me.
Ugh.
That's the wound you'll bear forever.
I will never forgive.
Well, plus you don't really expect Sanderson to do that because he doesn't usually try to
Right.
sucker punch you like that.
Right, like you're like, oh,
Yeah. Well, and that was another thing. And I understand why it had to happen, but Kaladin not being able to make his next step in this book and the repercussions of him not being able to come to terms with the fact that he cannot protect everybody and things like that. Like that was hard to, witness and watch, and also slightly unsatisfying to be like, so we're not leveling up this book. We're just
Right.
we're just ripping souls out. It's fine.
I just wanted to give Kaladin a hug.
Right?
Just take a break, man.
Nah, he's fine. He doesn't need a hug.
He's fine.
He always needs a hug.
Do you think he's really the hugging type? Like when we think of Kaladin, do we really
He'd be
know?
like-
I'm not saying he would want a hug. I'm saying he needs a hug.
He'd be that friend that you hug and he's like,
Yeah,
with
you
the
say
straight
"Can I-"
arms, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Where do I
You
put my
ask
hands?
permission. You don't just hug him,
Oh, for sure.
but he needs that moment to know that everything's going to be okay, and we're proud of him.
We're proud of him. That's what he needs. He needs someone to say that they're proud of him. More than a hug.
Yeah.
I still really love the scene, and this was kind of harkening back before we got onto the Moash train, where the herald that did come back was so excited that he held on for so long, even though the one girl was so sad about it. Like she felt so guilty, because all the heralds kind of went into madness out of both guilt and also immortality. Like the combo's not ideal.
Right.
The heralds, like I hope we do eventually understand more about them. Like I don't need to know a whole lot, but I have a lot of holes in my knowledge at the moment, and I would like to understand their importance a little bit. Because also, I hope we do go into that a little bit eventually, because like we've lost a herald, so I guess we can't remake the same jail. But I think it was already implied we can't really make that jail anymore, anyways. So
I think so, yeah. And I mean, that's
we have this
kinda
stupid Everstorm going wee.
Wee.
Dude, the Parshendis, what are they called? The really creepy ones. Like, what do they call them? The ones that are the past ancestors.
The returned.
The returned are messy. I hate them. They
Yeah,
me.
they are. They are.
Like, I'm not anti-Parshendi. I'm actually, kind of maybe on the side of the Parshendi should own the land. Maybe a little bit. But I'm anti the returned. I'm like, the returned are just invading bodies, and I don't like this.
Right. Well, they didn't know they were going to invade their bodies. They're like, this is not what I expected.
And those
when
are
she
things
was like,
done in the interludes sometimes, which is why.
And when she's like, "Where's my friend? He's gone. I don't remember the name, but like I am taking over his body." It's like
don't worry about it.
It's like
This
we're
is mine
good.
now.
Yeah.
This is mine. It's my body now.
I do also really love that the Parshendi, well, the Parshmen, not the Parshendi, the Parshmen that are awakened. I don't know if we have a name for them yet that they've chosen, but how in every different region they're in, their culture is kind of based off the land that they've been in for generations.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
So is it like the ones like they took to the sea, and then the ones in, was it Reshi? They started arguing with the government and filing claims against the government.
Yeah, and like the only ones that really want to fight are the ones in Alethkar.
And you're like, makes sense.
And I just think that's interesting, and kind of it adds to the idea that, like, I think someone reading the story would be like, well, what's the simple solution? Give a land to the Parshmen. But the Parshmen already tried to give a land to people, which was, the Shin territory, and that already didn't work out. And also, it's not as simple as that, because like these Parshmen are not a monolith. Like,
right.
They don't all have the same goals, desires, culture, and they don't want to leave the places that they have been living in. They just want to have agency. And so I think I'm still cautious about how Sanderson's handling this very complex theme, but we'll see. I get very nervous about it.
Yeah.
Well, because he tends to not want to go there.
Right.
He tends to find some way to kind of like,
Well, it's only gotten messier as like our real world events have gotten a lot more involved. I mean, they've always been this way, but we've definitely been like social media has really amped up the knowledge of a lot of world events recently. So it's always really interesting when I read stuff like this, and I just can't not think of like Northern Ireland and Ireland or Palestine and Israel. Like we just have all of these messy things. So I'm curious how
where people just want to exist and have their agency and not be kicked off of their.
Yeah.
This is true.
But it is really, so I was talking to Jess, and Jess should not be watching this video, mainly because she doesn't watch my videos, but also she hasn't read Oathbringer yet. Jess and I are friends, but no, I got on her case the other day because she was doing a wrap up. She's like, no one told me Ship of Magic was a family drama. And I'm like, bitch, that's all I say on my channel.
You'd be like, you don't watch my videos then.
All I say. Tell me you don't watch my videos, you know? But anyways, but she was talking about how the first two books feel really biblical to her in terms of like, everyone has a righteous right, the radiance and like all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, you really, I wonder what your thoughts will be when you realize like who the Voidbringers are.
Good times.
Because the first two books do, and like I think that's why Oathbringer was so jarring, is like the first two books are kind of like epic fantasy with clear good, bad people. Like, and there is a tiny bit of gray, but it's not like abnormal. You just have characters who used to be war criminals. Like that's normal in fantasy. Like,
right.
You know, I mean, like Avatar: Last Airbender, everyone's favorite character is a war criminal. Like,
oh, Uncle Iroh, yeah.
Yeah, and we all love him. But like he's Dalinar like tea. Like
Dalinar like
oh my gosh.
So let's see. Other thing, I mean, so we got to spend a lot of time in Shadesmar this book. Thoughts on Shadesmar?
Really cool.
I love it. I struggle to picture Shadesmar. For some reason, that is the one I struggle to picture.
That is the cover of book 4.
Yeah, but it's something I saw something. My sister-in-law said it to me the other day, and it's like me trying to read Shadesmar, and it's like really pretty, like art of it. And then it's like what I feel like it looks like in my head, and it's just like a bunch of like poorly drawn beads everywhere, like a 5-year-old drew it. And I'm like, literally.
That's how I was envisioning it too.
Like those like Orbeez. Just Orbeez everywhere.
Yes. No, like those like fun tactile toys that are, yes.
There's Orbeez everywhere.
Yeah.
And then from those Orbeez, it's kind of like if you have a stone garden and you have weeds that pop up, those are the plants. I have a stone out here that I have to weed, and I was actually weeding it while listening to the Shadesmar section. So maybe that's where my brain is at.
Inspiration.
Part 4, though, is officially when Adolin becomes my favorite character.
I love Adolin. I liked him before, but some of my favorite scenes that I marked in this was him and Shallan as well. But also, like, yeah.
No, continue, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, not just Shallan, like his whole character arc in this book, but reading it the second time, you know, you always notice the quieter moments. Yeah. So.
No. I just
returning
love
to Shadesmar for 1 second. I like it and I hate it at the same time that we learn that the spren are not the cute things that we were led to believe, that they're these like menacing, like one of the spren that we see is like the drool dripping off this horrific monster. And like, I just wanted them to be cute little like emotion spirits that you could just be like, oh, look, it's a cute little like happy spirit. No, it's like a freaky flying manta ray. And you're just seeing it's like little like anglerfish antenna. Like,
right.
It's cool, but also like horrifying and not what I was expecting the spread to turn out to be.
That they're like massive.
And it kind of starts to explain, because I know a big criticism from some people in the first book is like, well, then why aren't spren just showing up all the time? And it's like, it needs a certain level of concentration because these are actual creatures you're attracting. So it kind of starts to fill in those weird, like, how do spren work? sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still not totally sure how spren work.
And I this is another theme. I have no idea if Sanderson just touches on it or if he'll actually dig into it. But we talk about how fabrials work is you trap a spren, and the spren will then do the job. And we do actually see in Shadesmar that there are levels of spren. There are like conscious spren that are more like humanoid, adjacent, sentient species, and you do have more like animalistic spren. But like even, you know, in our culture, there are large opinions about like, should you be using animals for work and blah, blah, blah. And so I know that was like brought up, and like Honor had, well, not Honor, but Stormfather had like some snide, sassy remarks about it. But I have no idea if we're going to ever actually unpack that in any meaningful way. It kind of feels like you from Harry Potter, where it's like, we're just going to talk about house elves, but we're really just going to make fun of Hermione for giving a shit. So,
Yeah.
Hello. You recently reread Oathbringer. Nice. Yeah, I think this was my second time for Dawnshard. Yeah, Rhythm of War is up soonish for me. I've been waiting for this chat, so I'm excited.
Same. I've been putting it off. I was like, no, not yet. Not yet.
Well, it also like it gives it a good spacing because like I'll have finished it and then I'll still have like a month or so before the 5th book, so I won't be as like exhausted because it is just like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mom, are you doing something?
Yes.
We
are.
Sitting here in a room.
I'm just talking to myself.
I mean, you do record videos. Is that not the definition?
I mean, yeah. It's been a minute since I've recorded a video.
That's hilarious.
So Shadesmar. I also like that there's these different factions, and it kind of leans more into also, you know, Kaladin's having this struggle the whole book about what does it mean to be honorable, who should he be protecting, and you know, those honor spren are so shaped by like the Alethkar ideas of it, not just Alethkar, but like humans in general. So I don't know. I just enjoy the spren. I enjoy more of the spren that we get in the 4th book. That's very fun to me. Just to be vague about it in case people.
Yeah. I like the 4th book part of that.
Adolin and Maya's relationship starts in this book, and it's everything. I'm just saying, it's everything. Adolin coming to terms with him not being the most powerful person in the room, I think he handles that with a lot of good dishevelment and grace. And the fact that he like needs a purpose to handle his own mental health, he's like, I'm stressed out of my mind. What is a thing I can do? Okay, Kaladin is a blob on the floor. I'm just gonna, you know, treat him like a battle-worn soldier, and we're just gonna nudge him along.
Oh no.
Adolin
Like-
does definitely break out of his like kind of douchey frat boy
He does.
persona.
I'll admit
And you
it.
realize that there is a little heart of gold underneath all of his like kind of womanizing.
I also like his womanizing. I do really think was just him not understanding anything. Like I don't know. Like I never
agree.
felt like he was definitely someone who didn't respect the women he was dating, but it wasn't because I don't know. I just couldn't understand what he was doing, and I don't think he did either. I think he was just like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in this book when you realize that it wasn't necessarily like malicious that he thinks women are lesser. It's just like he doesn't know how to communicate with people unless he's like hitting them with a sword, and then he starts to learn how to communicate with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like,
He did grow on me. And we all know I'm an Adolin, not a fan, typically.
I mean, and I think it's fair to start out that way. He is like kind of, you know, he's a privileged prince who like doesn't necessarily treat everyone with the respect they deserve. And part of that is he wasn't trained to. And I think the fact that he does grow gives him a lot of stuff. Like he's, I don't know, if Elend and Dalinar had a kid, it is Adolin. If we're talking about Sanderson male characters.
I can see that.
So, but I love Maya and Adolin so much.
Yes.
Also, I didn't know that the lady was what's her face from Warbreaker, my first read of Oathbringer. So I didn't know.
Vivenna?
She's Vivenna.
Yeah.
I had no idea
Vivenna.
she was Vivenna.
Yeah.
I did catch that pretty early. That was like the one that I was so proud that I caught. And I think it might be the only one that I've ever like just caught on my own.
I did love how they were all doing that sword dance together.
Yes.
Yeah.
They all had the same teacher. It was like,
That was
I
so
did like that. There are a lot of funny moments in this book, like that I didn't realize going into the reread. Like, it kind of made me laugh. Like, I really like when at the very beginning when Kaladin goes back to his hometown, and they don't really realize who he is at first. And then he just like decks for a showed in the face. And I'm like,
that reunion chapter is pretty fun. And then also like his childhood sweetheart. And like, she's like, this is my town. Stop messing it up. Like, I loved how he thought of her as a damsel in distress. And she's like, no, I'm not in distress or a damsel. I'm just.
yeah.
Like, get out of my way. Like,
Yeah.
I loved that. You can really see his stubbornness coming from his dad. Like for some,
Oh yeah,
you can't protect them all. It's like, yeah, you can't stay here. Get out. Like, goodness. No, that was funny. One of the classic Dalinar flashback where he's like, he goes into the storm to get the knife to eat the meat. Like,
he's like, I just needed a knife.
Yeah. No, and like, what do you guys think of the Taravangian stuff in this book? I thought that was interesting. I can't remember how much of it pays off in the fourth book, other than the big thing that I won't talk about. But.
Yeah.
I feel like his sections are probably one of the sections that kind of drag for me because they feel a little samey, that I don't know that I needed to see as much of his like good days versus bad days and all of his like testing about his intelligence and whether or not he's allowed to make blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Agree.
So I like it because I know where it goes, but I think in isolation and Oathbringer, it's even knowing where it goes, it still feels like it's a little bit ham-fisted and too much.
When he's like, I don't want to listen to this music anymore. Kill the singing kids. I
don't know why I don't feel the same way, and I don't know if I even disagree in terms of like exposition or plot. I just always like. I think it's my sort of thing where like this character has answers. Am I going to get answers right now? And like that's the momentum for me to get through the scenes is like, am I getting a little tidbit? Am I getting a thing? And sometimes I don't, but by that point I finished the section. And so that was like already paced me through it. And then I'm on to the next whatever. So
that makes sense.
So I think that's why it didn't feel slow.
I also really like, probably because this is the most recent part that I got to, I think this reread. Dalinar kind of struggling with the fact that like the pen is mightier than the sword, and he's like, I just want to like hit people, but these letters have done more good than any of our war, and like really struggling with the fact that he's like, well, maybe the world is changing.
One thing that's distracting, if you listen to the audiobooks and you've read Wheel of Time, is I'm pretty sure they make this one land just sound like the Shawshan, and I don't like it. The Shawshan is the coolest part of Wheel of Time, but they have a really weird accent.
That's funny. See, I haven't read Wheel of Time.
But like, I also don't necessarily like his way of doing like a drawl, like Michael Kramer. I'm just like, I don't get why this is her voice right now.
Yeah.
So, Laura said the first read was a flat out binge. It was enjoyable, but a little exhausting too. Yeah, Oathbringer. We talked about it a bit at the beginning. It's kind of just you have to love the series. Like, and that's why I get nervous when people don't like adore Words of Radiance. Like, yes, there are some people who don't adore Words of Radiance and Oathbringer's like their thing. But like, it's just one of those things where I'm like,
exception.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, like, when it happens, I just get nervous. Like, well, why are you reading it? Is there a reason you're still reading Stormlight? Because, like, truly, the pacing does not improve that dramatically from the pacing of, like, Words of Radiance. I think Rhythm of War might be on par, but it's still just, like, a long series where, like I said, being bored is kind of, it's a feature, not like a, it's kind of a part of it. There's going to be stuff with a multi-point of view, long fantasy series where you're like, this point of view is not interesting to me. And I think for a while, my least favorite parts were the coalition building, but I've become more neutral to excited about them. So,
yeah.
So, yeah. Especially because Stormfather's a sassy person. He's like, oh, I could have always used storms. Or
he's like, yeah, I always knew that. He's like, what do you mean?
Ask.
You didn't ask.
That's an obvious question to ask, of course.
Literally. I do like we got our little wedding in this book too.
We got our Empress. Big fan.
Yes,
big fan.
Big fan.
I'm like, that's another thing. So like Yasna, she gets, a lot of stuff in this first arc of Stormlight. And I think unless he's changed something in book 5 and he's killed her off or who knows, she's supposed to be in the second arc.
Roger's like done.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites too. I love Yasna. If he kills her off, I will be so angry.
I just
it would depend on how he did it. It would have to be a real epic, like she's trying to take down, I don't know, like it would have to be.
He's already fake killed her off once. So if she dies again, we have to assume it's for real because we can't just keep resurrecting characters. Like that's just.
I don't know.
Were the Ghostbloods a big player in this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is when Shallan really tries to like
when
get
she
in
really
with them,
like,
and you see her starting to do the trials and like hiding in rocks and like learning how to use her powers.
Yeah, and then she gets the letter at the end, like, "I will give you your next assignment soon," or
Yeah, because
very
we have to keep
very
an eye
James
on
Bond.
Ghostbloods.
Yeah,
They're like our Cosmere crossover, but they're also like getting more important. So right now, I think they're still just like a weird thing for Shallan to do because most of this book was Shallan going, "I don't know what I want."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make a personality that wants everything.
Yeah, so I'm just going to make all the personalities.
Or she wanted to be everyone but the person who had to, like, I think part of it came from she doesn't feel confident in her base personality, the Shallan personality being able to handle things, which is not true, but she doesn't have faith in it. So that's why she, like, does all that she does. I'm glad we landed on, the 3, Shallan, Veil, and Radiance. I don't think I can handle more personally.
Yeah. I don't think she can either.
I don't think she can.
As it is.
But also, it's built perfectly to allow for a throuple. But Sanderson could never be so brave.
No.
But I do love how Adolin is like her rock. And like that's what I love about Adolin. He's just like, he's the one character who like isn't an idiot 90% of the time, at least when it matters. Like he's an idiot when it's a social situation, but like that doesn't stress me out. Like, in a tactical political situation or sword situation, at no point has he been like Kaladin being like, well, maybe I will let Moash kill Elhokar. Like, he doesn't do dumb nonsense. Like, I don't know. Kaladin, Shallan, and then of course, actually Dalinar doesn't like stress me out, but like, Odium's pressing all his buttons at the end of this book. So, it's a little dicey.
Well.
And then we get to see Navani starting to come into her own and like kind of the sweetness with Dalinar and her and him being like, no, you're not just a patron of the scholars. You are smart and worthy in your own right. Like they wouldn't be able to do this without you. And she really comes. I'm so excited for Rhythm of War because she becomes so good. I love Navani.
Yeah, she's awesome.
I do love her in Rhythm of War.
No, I really liked the Navani chapters we got, especially like even past the whole, like she's a project manager, which is like a skill. Like we've all had bad managers and bad project managers. Like having a good project manager that actually can see the lay of the land, see how to use the resources, like just even outside of tech, which is obviously like her favorite thing. Like when it was the political coalition stuff, she's like, all right, everyone's sitting here. Who's doing what? What should we be like? Her brain in those situations is so fun.
Yeah, she's always so fun to follow.
Yes.
And she's another one kind of like Taravangian when you start getting answers about how stuff works or whatever. You get a lot of information about Fabrials and
and like she also, I think, she plays an interesting role, not like a big role, but she's a part of Dawnshard, right? You see her kind of doing her day-to-day because like like Dalinar and Navani, they're in charge of Urithiru. Like that's their thing. You can't pick a main character to die, but someone might. We'll never know.
No one says.
I mean, we will know in December.
Yeah.
We will know.
We will know. We don't know if they'll come back.
Yeah.
That's true. But we do know that we have to see the body. Like if there's the body and we see it,
you have to see
then
the
it
body.
might be real.
It might be. But then, their spirit could just be reconnected to something.
Can you imagine if they'd done that with Elhokar? People would have lost their minds.
Honestly,
there's
if
still a
it's
chance.
The right moment for soap opera maximized effect, I allow it. Like I allow it if it has a good payoff and it makes things awesome. But when it doesn't, I get frustrated.
You just
I
need to
agree.
see Kleenex with book 5. I feel like that's what's going to happen.
I'm stressed.
I think we're going to have the unique scenario of someone being separated from their spren, but neither one of them's dead. But that loss of that connection is like, you know, kind of
Worse than a
ridiculous.
death.
Not worse, but you know, there's a heaviness to. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
Paladin and Syl are not making out of this in one piece. I don't know if that means death or separation or what, but that's not happening.
That gives me
I'm
what's his
terrified.
name? Philip.
Pullman.
Yes.
It reminds me of
Pullman.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, his dark materials. That consequence at the end is kind of heavier to me than any death I've ever read.
Yeah.
So
At the end of book 1.
3.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
I mean,
I
book
think-
1 is sad. Don't love it, but that is a death.
Book 3 is.
Book 3, and like it's a 1-2 punch because earlier in book 3, there's the separation of your soul, and then at the end it does a different. Book 3 is a lot.
Spoiler.
That's a series that you don't expect to go the direction that it does after book 1. You're like, yay, cute animals, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, what?
Wait,
Yeah.
was it? Yeah.
Ghosts everywhere? And what?
12-year-old me was so in. I was like, this is it.
Yes.
So yeah. Back to this. Before we pivot to Dawnshard, any other scenes, moments, portions of Oathbringer you want to bring up?
I loved the scene with Wit and Shalon when he told her.
Yes.
Those stories.
That made me tear up this time.
That was
He's like,
good.
the world is better because you're in it. And it's like, I love you guys.
Also, for anyone who like has consumed Attack on Titan, that story he tells always reminds me of Attack on Titan.
I have not.
With the wall and
Attack
like
on Titan.
not knowing who is put in like the two interpretations of who is in and outside the wall, which is like a big part of lore in Attack on Titan.
I can see that. I see that now.
Interesting.
And I like, but and obviously the Prometheus kind of reference of like, and then they brought the light.
Yes.
I also like when Dalinar convinced what was it? Was it Queen Fen's son to fight him?
Yes.
And he like literally just he's like, okay, and he gets stabbed and they're like, oh my god, you just killed Dalinar. And he's like, nah, just kidding.
But I could have killed you and I didn't, so trust me now.
Yeah, and he's like, JK, not dead. And he's like, oh my god, you're gonna kill me now. He's like, nah, I'm not like that anymore.
Not anymore.
Not like that
Blackthorn,
anymore.
we put him to rest. Don't worry about it.
The old Dalinar is dead now, thank you.
Now I'm hearing like Taylor Swift.
That's what I
Yo,
heard
Dalinar
right
can't
now.
come
It's
to the
like,
phone right now. Because he's
Dalinar can't come to
dead.
the
'Cause
phone
he's
right
dead.
now.
Yes.
Dalinar's reputation era.
It is- I'm here for it. It is. That is what Oathbringer is. The subtitle of Oathbringer.
We are not pairing a Taylor Swift album to each book. That is not what we're doing.
Oh my
That
god.
was very unintentional. But I love it.
That's never leaving my brain though. Next time I read Oathbringer.
Or the next time you hear that song, you're gonna be like, the old Dalinar can't come to the phone right now.
Dalinar. So Dalinar is the character I associate with the most pop music, but up to this point, it's been something reasonable, like Disturbed.
Because he's down with the sickness. Like,
Yes, or his Asylum, Warrior. There are some great songs.
dude, there's some great Disturbed songs.
Oh my
We all know
God.
metal is my main genre.
And now it's
Dude,
Now I
T-Swift.
just see him with
And Taylor Swift.
headphones, like hitting play on an album. Like, let's
He needs
do
like a
this.
cute little like snake themed outfit.
Oh, and I think it's funny. I didn't realize this.
I mean,
you
with his
you
tight
guys
butt.
picture Dalinar with or without a beard?
I'm pretty sure
It's
it's
short
kind of
beard.
scruffy.
With a beard.
Short beard.
Yeah. So
I
I'm
wouldn't
pretty
say
sure
scruffy,
it's
like,
never been
well
disclosed that he
maintained.
has a beard or not, but everyone thinks of Dalinar with a beard. We all do that. And that's also why we've never had like a face-on shot of him.
Like
But
a
I think
salt and pepper, like very well maintained short
Yeah.
beard.
No,
I don't think he'd
agree.
let
Everyone
himself get
agrees Dalinar should
scruffy.
have a beard.
He'd be a silver fox.
He'd definitely be a silver five.
So,
I think his
uh,
personality traits go with the beard. I think that's why we.
well, we also, I mean, okay, I did for a long time until someone did the fan art. I pictured Alethkar way more like medieval Europe ethnicity
Mhm.
markers than Asian markers.
I did too.
Mhm.
So I think there is a lot of like, we've read a fantasy like this and he fits this archetype, which is like worse Ned Stark. Like,
Insert here.
You know, like, I don't know. So, yeah.
I get that.
Well, that's like the thing. When you first read it, it's like, yeah, so you are kind of like Ned Stark, and you are kind of like Robert Baratheon, like Gavilar, and like, you just...
Yes. Terrible.
All right, should we switch to Dawnshard? I know there's like a shit ton of Oathbringer, but we're never going to get to everything.
We're never going to get to all of it.
So transitioning into Dawnshard, I forgot how soon Cheery Cheery came into the picture, and it made me so happy.
When I was reading Dawnshard, I couldn't remember the resolution for Cheery Cheery, and I'm like, this bitch better not die.
I know. And honestly, Dawnshard, I read it when it came out, and I didn't remember a lot of I remembered some of the plots, but so many scenes, I just remember, because I visualize when I read, and so I can remember so many like specific scenes, and maybe it's because a lot of it, I feel like, was water-based, and I love anything with like the sea. But that one was just so much fun to read.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, first of all, my favorite interlude character is Rin. I love her. Like, I love the Trademaster. I love that she got to be in part 5 and was part of the whole gem thing. I think her discussion about disability gotten later in life and how one, you know, gets their agency was really good. And I loved her paired with Lopin. And how, like, and it's a similar thing with like Wayne's humor and stuff like that, but you see why the humor exists. And I do think it's different from Wayne's humor in like Mistborn Era 2, where it's just like, well, if I make the joke about it, it like breaks the ice. And then I have agency over how people are perceiving myself and my disability. And like, you know, I just really enjoyed those moments of Lopin and Rin together. Mm-hmm. And then how Lopin realized at the end that he actually hurts people's feelings sometimes. Yeah. And how he keeps saying the ideals at like the least like awesome moments.
Right. And he's like, oh,
you do it now.
No,
I was about to die.
He's like, I just don't get my moment.
These crab people though, they're wild. Like have we
just
seen
like the
them
little
elsewhere?
eye like wandering away? You're like, no.
No, it just, I don't know why that always creeps me out in my head when I say, I'm like,
I'm like trying to figure out, have we seen them in any other Cosmere thing besides Stormlight? Because I know we've seen them in Stormlight in both novellas.
I'm not the person to ask that question to.
Dude, was that?
I don't remember.
I don't think we have.
Yeah.
Because it's implied that they are not just on Roshar, that they are Cosmere entities, aliens per se. Probably the most alien thing we've encountered. Because they're definitely hive mind creatures that, like, each creature is a hive, and then the hives talk.
I forget what they're actually called, though.
All right, Laura agrees with me, so I'm not, like, making this
sleepless?
Up. Yeah.
Is it the sleep? That's not what's in Yubi, is it?
I don't know. Oh, yes, there is one in Yumi that is
the girl.
The one who's the waitress or the owner of the noodle place.
Ooh.
Oh, no, wait, it wasn't her. No,
right. It wasn't her, because the owner of the noodle place is...
That was the cryptid. You're right. No, it was in the
Isn't that the
place,
spren?
one of the people.
It's one of the friend group.
Yeah. She wasn't a main character, but she was like
one of the friend group, yeah.
Yes,
and you find out at the end of Yumi.
One in Lost Metal. But I thought we had more of like someone who was using the weird stone power thing that I don't remember what it's called. but they're interesting to me. We still don't know what Dawnshards do, which is a pretty big crime. We know that what's his face in that one secret project book used to hold a Dawnshard and no longer does. Oh, my husband finally texted me. He's just been out of town, and I've just been like, oh, fine, don't text me forever. It's fine. Yeah, so in Sigil, he's held a Dawnshard, but a different one, I think, than Rin. And it's had repercussions on him and his relationship to his spren. So we know it does stuff. Whose cat is upset?
That's Katya, because she wants Alex to pet her. Because he just got back from grocery shopping, and so I've been ignoring her, and now she's like, me.
My cats are thriving on my new couch right now. They're just... Oh, Donna just did a stretch. It's really cute.
Yeah, we're it'll be interesting to see how they do with this 6-hour drive. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to do, if we're going to shove some Benadryl down them or what we're going to try to do to shut them up a little bit for my personal sanity.
There is like a really basic, ask your vet, but there's a really basic, safe anxiety med you can give them.
Okay.
And like for us, it did just like, it made them just a little bit less. I mean, it's based off your cat, like how stressed they get. Ours, literally, Kieran sounds like he's being murdered for a 1-minute drive. So
that's Jujubee. Katya doesn't mind as much. She kind of just curls up in the corner, but Jujubee,
I think it's called like gazapentin or something. Like, just ask your vet. Like, it's not expensive and it's like pretty easy, and they just give you the dose based off weight. So, obviously, the cats can also have Benadryl if you dose it right, but I don't know if that'll work as well as the anxiety med.
Massacre
for our 13-hour drive, so I'm sure you can do it. I have so much faith. And you can do like water and litter box and stuff like that, but in my experience, cats are so stressed on car rides. They don't eat, they don't drink, they don't go to the bathroom. They're just So I just put like garbage bags under them and blankets on top so that if something happens, just throw out the blanket and we move on. Anyways, back to Dawnshard. I just really liked this book. I just read it in like a day and a half, and it was a very engaging adventure story. And I love an adventure story. I love Rock's daughter. I love Rock's daughter.
Yes.
right.
She is great. I also really liked kind of the misdirection and the whole like, who's sabotaging the ship? And it ties so well into that interlude you guys all hate in Oathbringer with the one soulcaster who turns into smoke, which is so cool. Like,
I actually liked that interlude.
I don't hate the interludes. I find them usually tedious.
Agreed.
I like that interlude.
I understand that they are purposeful.
And they add a lot of extra page length to something that is already obscenely long.
The whole point of long epic fantasy is indulgence.
I know.
The whole point. We're not trying to be tight. We're the opposite of tight.
Yeah. And I'm not disagreeing with you, but they can get tedious.
Yes, but sometimes when it's nice and tight and right, like it is in Dawnshard, it also does the job.
I thought you were going to say like Dalinar's butt, according to Lift.
I was like, I loved how it was not at all a bad word in that sentence, but it sounded.
it sounded.
Well, that's because in my brain, I was like going inappropriate places when you're talking about how loose it was. And I was like, well, I won't engage with that. So I'll just go this way.
Go opposite.
Oh gosh.
I don't think we can all do anything together and have any kind of conversation without it somehow, some way.
Do you guys think
going that way?
So it's already been talked about in this book that there's that perpendicularity at Rock's home, because we tried to get to it in Shadesmar and we couldn't because it's like enemy. And then in the Dawnshard, they talk again about how things have been happening through Rock's daughter's point of view. Do you think that's going to be a player in the 5th book? Because I don't remember us doing a lot of it in the 4th book, but maybe I'm forgetting.
Pretty nice. I think that'd be a cool element.
I think it would too.
I feel like he usually mentions things like that with intention. He doesn't usually kind of just like,
yeah.
He is a lover of foreshadowing and then making you feel dumb when you see it because it's been there all along.
It does feel like, I do think, and he's not doing it poorly yet because it still comes, usually stuff comes up within a book or two, which is fine. But I do think like I was more used to him giving you something and you find out closer to the point. So like there are a lot of stuff that happened in Oathbringer and Dawnshard that we still have not really dealt with in Rhythm of War in satisfying ways. So I'm like hoping we get some satisfying closing points in the 5th one, just because like we're not going to get another Stormlight book for like a decade. So, which is wild to think about.
Wild.
I know.
I don't think I like that.
I don't think you have a choice.
Himself.
Like, I really feel like it's not going to be finished before I die. Like,
you're younger than him. I think you're okay.
I still have
like he'll just keep releasing stuff posthumously, though.
Well, he did say that he has stuff sequestered away, and he understands that at least for his Cosmere stuff, He wants to make sure the entire story, I think, always makes it to us. So even if something happens, there are like copious notes and a plan for people to somehow get it out. So I don't know how detailed the plan is, but the fact that there is one, and like, I do like, no artist has to have this type of unspoken contract with their fans. But I do appreciate when there's a recognition that people who have been supporting you, like part of it is they want payoff. Like, yes, that's not like your job. Your job is to give them the book that they paid for. And that's the extent of your relationship. But, it's nice.
I feel like it would be weird if Sanderson specifically didn't have a plan for that, though, especially after he was the one that finished Wheel of Time.
Yeah, his wife probably has all the details, and
he's
what writer he wants her to choose.
Yeah,
and his writing style isn't like that hard to mimic, I would say.
No, I don't.
Because it's not much of a style.
No, it's very.
So, like I said, I don't know, and also, sometimes you just accept what you get, and you have a fun time.
You get what you get.
And when it's over, it's over.
I mean, at least at this point, we'll have the first arc. I don't know how much of a satisfying conclusion it's going to be, since the jump between books 5 and 6 are supposed to be less than the jump between eras 1 and 2 of Mistborn, right? So it's like up to a decade or two. Because they're supposed to be following
characters that still exist. So I assume at most a couple decades, if not less.
Yeah. So I'm just like, how much of an ending is it going to feel like? I'm very curious.
Yeah. I mean,
I have more faith in him than some other authors.
Based
on
the conflict introduced in Oathbringer, right? The conflict of, this isn't as black and white a conflict as we thought between Parchment and people and stuff like that. I think my optimistic goal is we handle the returned and their stuff. Like that's, I think, our big tangible villain thing that we can handle by the end of Stormlight. And then the messiness is we still have all of these different species and cultures of humanoid conscious people that need to learn to coexist. And I don't think we're going to necessarily calmly handle shards. And I assume the shards are going to, we'll tamp it down. It'll be quiet, but it's going to bubble in a couple decades. And we're like, we actually have to deal with
We have to deal with this now.
That's my tentative what I think we could accomplish prediction.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah.
It's like they're going to fix some things and some things get like a little band-aid.
I'm just nervous because he's doing so much in book 5, at least based on the blurb that was released. So I'm like, oh God, we'll see. I'm going to try to have faith.
Blurbs are never helpful, Roger. Read the blurb for Way of King and tell me that tells you what's in that book.
Nothing.
Yeah, but the Way of Kings one doesn't say that everybody's been paired off in random little groups and doing these very specific side questy things.
So you're saying you're scared the Truth and Wind is Infinity Wars and we don't have Endgame?
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. I'm excited though because I'm going to Dragonsteel and I'm going to do
Oh, nice.
Me and my sister-in-law. I'm going to die because it's cold.
She'll be reading the last Stormlight book back.
That sounds amazing to me.
This is
when you'll be retired, you'll be able to just sit there with your tea or whatever beverage of choice and slowly, leisurely read.
Listen, my grandmother at 80, she reads so much and rereads so much.
My grandmother was
when I'm retired, what else am I supposed to do with my life? You think I'm going to go work at some convenience store to have human interaction? Absolutely not. I will be rereading all of my books.
You've earned your alone time.
You'll be playing your video games. You'll be rereading. Can you imagine? We haven't had the generation of gamer grandparents yet.
I mean, I'm kind of here for that.
There's one Twitch streamer, I feel who's this old cute grandma.
Aww. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions, but we're gonna have a whole
a whole generation.
The Gen Xers are going to. It's gonna be a time.
That's definitely gonna. That's gonna be awesome.
So, any other thoughts? Otherwise, just to tell the announcement, then we can say any other thoughts. The next one will be on Roger's channel. 70. Oh, you're doing when the
Roger's doing
2025. Okay, so
yeah, so it'll be on.
It just goes in clockwise order. It'll be Stephanie's channel, probably in the beginning of November-ish.
That's what we're aiming for.
I think we're aiming before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was trying to finish it by the end of October. I think is
I
what
just
we
say
talked
before
about.
Thanksgiving because after that it's like, oh, schedules. What are schedules?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
That's why I was thinking the first or second weekend of November at the latest.
That makes sense.
And it'll just be Rhythm of War, right?
Yeah.
There's no
Okay.
other things. We've read all the things.
We've read all the things.
Unless you want to read White Sand, which I don't. So I'm not.
No, I read the
Not
excerpt
really.
in Arcanum Unbounded, and I'm okay.
I'm just kind of
Yeah.
waiting for his official novelization where he actually goes back and like makes it.
The Sand does stuff with investiture. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
That's it.
All I can
Sand-
think of is I hate sand.
Sand is awful, and you live in Florida, so make it make sense.
I don't like sand. All I can think of is that scene. And
That's why
Wait, is it the
California is
second
nice, 'cause there's
one?
pretty ocean views that are cliffs and not sand.
Well, sand hides bugs, and they find me. And like, so there are these types of creatures. They're tiny crustaceans, but they're called sand fleas, and they normally don't bother.
absolutely
They don't bother the
the
average
worst.
person. But if you are sensitive to bug bites, you are also sensitive to these bites, and you get all these tiny little spots on your foot, and it
Mhm.
burns, and you're just like, "What is this?" It's horrible.
They're the worst ever.
Yeah.
And when I talk about them, people are like, "What are you talking about? I've never seen this." Like, good for you.
Then they
I'm
don't.
happy. I'm happy for them, but I'm not one of those people because ow.
Whenever we go to a resort or something as a family, I'm like poolside. I'm like, nope, I can't go to the beach. Can't. Like I can walk along the beach, but I can't just like post it at the beach for a long period of time. So,
The worst is like if you go in the ocean, like if you're like a diver or something like that. It's not when you're like at the very, you have to go in the deeper parts. Is I forget what they call them. They call them sea lice, but it's like coral, little baby coral polyps. They itch like they itch really
this
bad.
is also why this is a really hot take. I am anti-ocean. I am all in on Great Lakes. Great Lakes are great.
Great Lakes are great.
Fresh water.
I love ocean,
Unsub.
but
They don't smell like sulfur. Anyone who's like, I love the smell of the ocean, like you like
Okay, I
when the
do.
tide recedes and it smells like eggs. Okay.
It does
I
not
like the
smell it.
salty-
It's different.
I like
No.
the salty smell.
It smells different.
It's the same.
It might be the same, but it smells different to me.
And
I
then
like the
you're like
salty.
in a place either in Florida or the Chesapeake Bay, and you're taking a shower at an Airbnb, and it smells like eggs. And you're
I
like,
will
why is this
say-
water gross?
I have not been to a southern beach, so I only have northern beaches for reference.
They still smell like egg.
Do they? I've never been to a northern beach.
I've been to both because I was in New England for a while, so I've been to
Mm.
beaches on the coast of Maine and stuff like that.
California doesn't smell like that to me. I've been to a lot of beaches in California, but only
Yeah,
California.
They don't
My
smell
only
like
experience with Florida was when we went to Disney World, which is not a beach. It's a
No,
weird
not at
boggy
all.
lagoon situation.
There's no beach at Disney World.
Listen, I just love a great lake, fresh water, less scary things. You don't get rushed
That is
away. in, like,
incorrect.
undercurrent.
depending on where you live.
Are you in Florida? Is the water wet? There is a gator.
Or water moccasins.
Absolutely. They're scary in the gators. They'll chase your ass.
I'm talking about in
Yeah.
a Great Lake. What's in your Great Lake?
Things that will hurt you.
There
You
aren't
can walk
that many.
outside and look
I
at your
don't-
swimming pool and be like,
I
there
don't
might
know
be a
the
gator
lakes
in there.
down here. No. I'm sure the Great Lakes are fine, but the lakes in Arkansas.
That's what I was saying. I'm talking about a Great Lake. You must be able to see it from space.
Ah,
That's
Our
the
lakes aren't that
definition of a
great.
Great Lake. Can I see it from space?
our lakes aren't that great.
We just
I grew
have
up on
average
one.
lakes.
I grew up on an average lake. I
it
remember
was
having to
always a
check
point
for
of contention
moccasins.
Growing up, I would go to New England or somewhere, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I've been to the beach, and like we have beaches along the Great Lakes." And people are like, "Oh no, that's a lake. That's not a beach." I'm like, "But there's sand, and there's a sandbar, and I can't see the other side." Anyways, we are derailing. I should have lunch. Any other thoughts, Roger? It is your read along. Anything you need to say to the people?
To the people.
No, we're almost done. Just 2 more.
Cool.
Crazy.
That's wild. I feel like we've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah, because
I've
we
been in
planned it in
many
2022.
locations.
Yeah.
And then it
And
started
look
in
at us. We've all
2023,
persevered.
and it will end in 2025.
I'm impressed with us, guys. We're sticking with it.
I know it hasn't fizzled out.
I mean, I think technically I never did read Warbreaker.
That's true.
I'll get
I
over it.
did.
And Jesse never really fully read Oathbringer and Dawnshard, so
I didn't get to Dawnshard. I read half of Oathbringer.
That's only like 600 pages. Quitter.
Only like
Only
will
like a
reread.
full-length book and then some.
look, cross country season started.
I will be ending this. Thanks for everyone who was here live, and for anyone watching this replay. Hope you enjoy the chaos, because we don't take notes for this really great video podcast series. And
awesome.
it shows. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.